community. Now, of course, none of us have a crystal ball to know how the next, I don't know, few months are going to play out. So some of these questions are going to be TBD, but really what I want to do is hear from you, the community. What is on your mind? Get questions about how things are going. There's topics you want to raise. We would also be interested to get feedback on how this meeting went. We would certainly be welcome that feedback as well. So this is really just time to have Q&A. So you tell us what are you interested in, what can we discuss on here. Oh, come on, everyone's so chatty. Oh, great.
And you have it listed up there, but I'll just call it out because we were just talking about it over the break, and that is the under the NIST 800-171 compliance issue. I think a lot of institutions are really struggling with how to implement workspaces that will enable them locally to download data sets from AnVIL, dbGaP, dbGaP, what have you. And I think AnVIL has a really good opportunity here to be a place that people don't need to set up their own infrastructure. They can just use AnVIL, but I think working out how do they do that? Part of it will be then having something that the signing official of the universities feel comfortable signing, saying that yes, we certify that we're okay with our investigators using AnVIL. I think figuring out that process and making it clear to investigators will really help, because I know our institution is struggling with it.
That's great feedback. A couple of points. So, at Hopkins, I'm like, oh yeah, we have this great AnVIL thing, and it does all these things. They're like, AnVIL what? So there's definitely sort of an educational awareness component to this, especially with signing. I think that position selects for people that are quite conservative corporately. So I think part of it just is on us to kind of educate, inform, and it's a focus outreach. At the NCURA meeting just a few weeks ago, there was a nice presentation upcoming at ACC2025. We're planning to have at least a flyer and throughout the talks, discussions about what's possible. Kind of the headline is this, through these certifications that, in my mind, FedRAMP is even the stronger level of certification. And we do advertise that all the time. I think we're just in this world where, to the average researcher, they have no idea what this code means. And they're just like, we kind of struggle with it. Another thing that we're advertising is we do have workflows now in place that will just directly ingest from dbGaP right into AnVIL workspaces, so you don't have to pass through any local servers. And that's going to be crucially important for maintaining. So yes, we're aware of this. We're doing, we're trying to get the word out. But again, to a lot of people, they just have no idea what these are.
Yeah.
Let me run this up so you can.
So this is becoming a very frequently asked question for our users. And so, how easy to connect, and it would be great to hear what questions your signing officials have, because we're starting to put together how to address questions and put it up on a blog post so researchers know, and by now there's just we're getting so feel free to reach out.
So Mike, I'll ask the question to you, but it's more for all of the AnVIL awardees. It strikes me that we are hitting a point where user adoption is likely to exponentially keep rising over the next few years. What is static is the number of people we have that are dedicated outreach and training people. On the other hand, we hope that the user community itself becomes a source of support to help that AnVIL deliver. People who help volunteer answer questions that are not getting money to do it from a NIH award. So would you comment on the scalability of ways to get people help, either through awards or through community volunteers, versus the expected rate of user growth, particularly for users like students, people new to the cloud that may need that extra level of help?
Yeah, you've brought up some interesting and challenging points, right? It's exciting to me to think that we're on an exponential growth curve, and by many metrics, clearly are. It's also terrifying to me around the exponential growth curve. You name it, from the set of data, the set of tools, the users that are there, the community that's there. What gives me peace of mind that I don't sleep great. What gives me a little bit of peace of mind is, we look to other platforms that have been successful, navigating this growth curve. I'm also, very deeply involved in Galaxy for the last 5 years. iProductor would be another example. Other successful. And I 100% agree with you. The way we can scale is through the community. 100%. So, while this is only our second community meeting, so, we're in a much different place than we were 5 years ago. I like to think in 5 more years, we'll be in even a stronger place. But I think you're right, right now, it's been us generating a lot of documentation and resources. We do have, in addition to kind of these forums, I would also point to things like DocStorm. It's an incredible resource for community members, and basically a few clicks can go from a workflow in their GitHub, publish it in DocStorm, and then that becomes a form of documentation. Like, I did this analysis, and here's how I did it, and you can modify it and customize it. But you're right. I think that's a good prompt for us thinking about the future, about how we can have more entry points that are set up for the community. If we take sort of a lesson learned from, say, the Galaxy world, there's this really nice Galaxy training network that has like hundreds and hundreds of tutorials that are all community developed. And there's some backend infrastructure that supports that, where not anyone around the world can contribute into this sort of documentation, these tutorials. I think that a strategy like that could be very successful as a way to scale. See some thumbs up there. I'd be curious from others as well how they think about managing this.
Thanks, Mark. I think I would just add in AnVIL the featured workspaces idea is something that we've been talking about even this week that we've been underutilizing, which is basically the simple beauty of workspaces being able to store your your data, your tools, even documentation on it, how the data was generated, how it was used in studies, links to publications. Those are really helpful scoped areas for those things to exist. So I think more and more, we've already started collecting information on data releases about that. I think you'll see those start to mature and us put those out as kind of curated data products for the community that will help people, even without needing to talk to someone else from the community, learn from what they've done just by examining what they've done, rerunning the workflows.
I think seeding the community is really important. And I think that's something that's being done through meetings like this. And again, we're really grateful for that interest work that's happened today. I think it's going to continue to be important. I know one thing we've been working on with some consortia like Emerge is how do we help them get their consortia there? So it's being driven a little bit more top down. We want it also to be so anybody in the community doing any brand new research can pick it up. Like we want that groundswell support. But sometimes getting these workflows in place and the work we're doing in this year, right? Some of it is, hey, we have these workflows that let's support them and make them available to the libraries so you can see the work and go and do replication. Some of that's going to be supported here. But I think really getting those other consortia, other grantees to say, hey, let's keep encouraging use of AnVIL. How do we make that feasible, practical? Because that's what's going to see it. That's the direct line. It's really those in the AnVIL side, the NHRI, what are you doing it? And it's not just sharing the data. It's not, hey, go spend 5 years doing all the work and then drop something in at the end. Like if we can get 4 days and doing more work earlier, then you build the good workflows that are shareable, and that's great for everybody.
And when you think about incentives, which direct behavior, we all could go out and tell everybody lots of emails, great emojis, why they should do this. It would maybe be helpful as furtherance of the NIH data management sharing policy if there were more direct requirements on sharing data tools and maybe kind of not necessarily written policy, but leading or support for program officers to share their data tools in these ways at the end of funding or publication. I think that is a reasonable driver that we can use to promote good behavior. I think is very much in line with the spirit of what the data policy does.
Thanks. I just wanted to point out that it's also very self-serving to put your stuff on AnVIL early because if someone uses your workflow, that can cite you.
So do it.
Actually, I have a question. So if we are conducting like many, like a lot of phenotype kind of GWAS, the results will be huge. And then communicate that results to clinicians, to collaborators. Some people will not want to see, I want to go to the workflow to see all the details. So they want to see graphic. So I wonder whether I will have some plan, say, we will have a forum where you can say, drop your money and available for them to search, like for this study, that's the result. So it will be a quick way, streamline that process. Maybe you can drop somewhere and then the result will be there, easy for them to search. Like that data structure help us to get our results out for clinicians to view it.
Great. Okay, Robbie,
Well, I think some of this is a Tara question too, but yeah, right, because it's this idea of, well, is it like the GWAS catalog, right? Hey, we can push the results up there and see it. And so I don't know, that hasn't been the primary type of data sharing that we're supporting. We've been focused on the row level data, but we've heard these kinds of requests before. I don't know if,
Yeah, I think that part of what could be considered is like a knowledge-based knowledge portal that is actually like visualizing data that has the other option, which I think we've seen people do, is to use the workspace description, kind of the attributes where you're able to narratively put things, to put a lot of information about the consortia, even I think with figures and results in that way. So that's not so much scalable across workspaces, but you would have that at least within the workspaces to show. If there was more work, we talked to some groups, Rose did a lot of knowledge-based work too. You could think more about that, but that's not currently built.
Maybe related to that specific point, I wonder if there would be utility to do the summary statistics from, I'm thinking like, so there's a UK biobank, all by all, BWAS, all of us, all by all, there's an MVP, all by all, probably FinGen, all by, there's a lot of these really big biobanks that have done like genome-wide, phenome-wide association studies. The summary statistics are generally available either through dbGaP or some other mechanism by download. And to your point, they're huge files. And so the general user has a hard time using them, unless you're pretty bioinformatics savvy. I wonder if there would be utility in figuring out how to get all of those summary statistics into AnVIL and building some workflows for doing meta-analyses or lookups, for certain phenotypes, for certain genes. Each one has a browser, which is great, but if you really wanted to do kind of cross biobank studies, it seems like AnVIL might be a good place to do that.
yeah, I know at least from the all of us side, it's not just easy to download, and the access control is set up all through the all of us, and that's actually still isolated there. So it's that, I know that part's going to be impactful. I don't know about some of the other things, like with the Neil Labs on the biobank. I don't know what that is. Anybody can download all of it. Yeah, so that's, yeah, it'd be interesting. But I think one thing, the question here starts to be about the like persistent user interfaces and multi-tenant apps versus what you can do in your workspaces. And I think that's because that's one of the things, my reaction with the GWAS, as a grad student, writing GWAS analysis, doing this, like, great, I create this on a Markdown document, you can actually embed cool interactive tables within a static HTML page, it really worked. But, AnVIL wasn't really hosting web pages. And so it would be a very different type of ask. And it's not to say something we could do, but it's a whole new range of thing to make that very easy. Because I think it would be great. I think that support the idea of, hey, here's how you can load it in. Like we mentioned, you can stream to your VM directly from these other services. You can load that in and do visualization. But I'm going to have to start it on my own notebook server. I'm going to have to. So I don't know where the challenge to get people to like jump up to that next level.
Do you want to comment too on some of the phenotype harmonization that you're?
Yeah, I mean, so I think this is on the row level data pieces, but I think to help search and findability there, that's one thing we've been working on a lot, is to say, hey, can we bring some of the free text, especially the older data? Everyone's been pushing more to standards. You're more likely to be getting HPO terms down than you were, say 10 years ago. But some of these days, we can structure that and make it a lot easier to do the findability. That's one of the nice things with the EFO term, for example, from US catalog, being able to say, hey, yeah, these are the same terms, but the fee codes that are used in some of the UKNL and cross them in a helpful way. So we're trying to get there on the row level data pieces too, to help define and access across the sites.
And I just wanted to make the point, putting on my other hat of the AnVIL Data Explorer. Just sitting here looking, it's hidden behind permissions and that type of stuff. But currently AnVIL, you heard 8 petabytes talked about off and on today, throughout the past few days. That represents roughly 278,000 donors, 442 biosamples, that type of stuff. So making that more findable and easy to access and getting some of the standardization is key, because yes, the workflows are important or critical, but also is the data, because there's a lot of extremely valuable data sitting here.
Yeah, I think expanding from just the genomic workflows that is like the core into like, hey, how do we support phenotypic workflows? How do we support summary stat workflows? I think it's something that hasn't been grappled with this much. I don't think.
You have
Right, so my question is gonna be more on the broadening access. I'm curious to know if there's any plans to have any focus around maybe less traditional communities you interact with. So, there's like the biology students, working professionals, but what about communities like high school students, like medical librarians, like general public, like we have people that come to hackathons that literally show up with their own genome being like, help me analyze this thing. So I'm just like, here, it happened. And we brought it printed. It was like a literal stack of paper. But anyway, I'm just curious if there's any sort of support, focus on, direction toward that broadening access piece.
There have been a few focused efforts. I mean, you already heard in the very last presentation about these cures, and there's something part of this data science community network, which was a focused activity to reach out to a whole range of institutions, ranging from large R1 research intensive institutions down to smaller community colleges and beyond. We did not go to high school students with their own genomes, but there were heads of programs along those lines, and I hear from Sergio, some of those are continuing on. So I think all of us here are very interested in that and are very passionate about it. There are some realities about how we navigate this, but I see this as AnVIL is a resource for everyone, no matter where you're from and what you're working on, and we try to support everyone. We try to make those resources available, and when opportunities arise to connect with those communities, that's great. That's great. I think we can all appreciate it.
I know we also ran a AnVIL Terra workshop in Sri Lanka earlier this year. I think that was exciting to do. We do want to, in some of our work with the broad, we try and get Terra directed to other places. I think as you do, in as much as you think about other countries, especially ones that are maybe less infrastructure forward for science, just the ability to have a credit card, use the cloud is a huge hurdle. So that's where credits are helpful, but once the credits are gone, there's not a really easy and now what path. So something we've thought about and care a lot about, but it's a hard systemic problem to solve.
So just along the lines of the other communities that we talked about, somebody bringing their own genome to analyze, it made me think, is there some sort of model for this in the citizen science space that you could build on a community for that and make it more of a win-win both ways, in that it's like reaching out to see more and all that to get to these different communities, but also getting analysis done that needs to be done through like that citizen science while capacity and use of the tool.
I think and maybe someone has an answer for this, I'm just not aware. Historically, I've seen issues with citizen scientists is particularly with controlled access data, which often requires institutional backing to sign off on. Data use certifications, things like that. So as much as we're thinking about that, there is some, I think this is probably beyond AnVIL and if your federal research agencies question, how could an individual attest to carry the liability that an institution currently does and is really only capable of, in the way that at least NIH runs those data use agreements. So, yeah,
Maybe there's like a happy medium in there of it's still through like medical schools and
Sure.
undergrad
Affiliates,
institutions and things.
yeah. Yeah.
And research training programs and fellowship training programs for doctor, medical doctor training and stuff, but we still have the institutional protection, but able to use that more citizen science model.
Yeah, I'd love to maybe discuss more. I think about my own institution, they would want to carry more liability if you probably paid for it. And then I don't know if that, for thinking high school citizen science and stuff, it's hard.
The only thing I'd add there is about 1.5 petabytes of open access data. From 1,000 genomes and genome reference consortium, and this spans multi-modality from short-read, long-read sequencing, RNA-seq data. It's completely open access, not to mention all the good resources that are kind of sit adjacent there. So there's a lot that can be done. In fact, for like most of my career, is all open access data. There's a lot that can be done there to get a first look at human population genetics and functional biology and all of the single cell data. So I think you prompt us to think about what more can be done there in sort of advertising that all those resources are there. And that's great, in a classroom, at a major research institution down to classes. I like that.
Well, not all of us are bench. You no longer have to be like institute affiliated. You can also be like business affiliated. So it's gotten a lot easier.
So it's gotten a lot easier to get access, for instance, for the All of Us Workbench, like my LLC can now create like an account, and anybody with an email address for my business can also have an account All of Us. So like that opened up so many more doors for me to be able to like bring this into the communities I work with. And I don't think there's quite an equivalent right now in AnVIL, but I'm reassociating that it's new. If it's new.
You don't have an exact equivalent. I mean, right now it's practice. It's basically open access, open to anyone immediately. Thanks to Duos and other technologies now, like there is a streamlined approach, especially if you're applying for like a GRU data set. That's quite streamlined. But we don't offer what you just suggested, like this like registered access where you see something. That's above my pay grade, but I'm sort of welcome that sort of discussion. I think that would open up these resources.
Yeah.
Well, I think specifically though, what you're describing is your organization is taking on that risk and you're the one signing the juror.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's something that we talked about. It's tough. Like that is a method really to get out into sports and sciences. But that question of who do I trust to take the right wing, and that's where the cost comes in.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome to hear that that's working. I think it's a question, should we AnVIL offer this? Is it something perhaps you can NHRI? Like, you want to, there's some where you're taking responsibility for sharing this data, you don't want to do it appropriately. I don't want to say, yeah, anybody with an email, come sign up to be a part of my, that's not what you're doing, and that's not what we want to do. And so I think that's where it's tough. Like we're really navigating the space of expecting that institutional risk. And it could be that there could be a sponsored center, particularly, maybe you should run one. I don't know if they fund you, for some grants. And they say, hey, we're doing this. We offer this training. We make sure people understand the risk. We bring citizen scientists, and we're adopting that. It's all way. Yeah, no, I know. I mean, like, hey, get the market up for this because I think that's in the model we live in right now. That's the important step. It's really cool. I didn't realize anyone was doing that. It's awesome to hear because that's what we had talked about. And I'm not the expert on this at all, to be clear. I'm familiar with some of the conversations. And from the All of Us data research center side, that's the stuff we were kind of talking about. I say, well, it's totally feasible for someone to have an organization to pick this up, to take on that risk, to sign those jurors. I have no idea personally, like reliability or cost or how do you do it. Do you just make an LLC up and then if something bad happens, you shut it down? I don't know. Probably shut out. It's much harder.
We're scared, because we didn't try to pay attention. So like, let's share this, the first time from email I got last week. My name is Dia Carvick, and I am an incoming 8th grader working on a research project in the Washington State Science Fair. The project title is Predicting B7H3 Expression in Pediatric Cancers Using New Gene Signatures. I'm writing to ask whether you might be able to share or pointing towards both ACC expression data, sampler metadata, in unique expressions of electrocytes. We're hoping to build a machine learning model where ideally looking for at least 50 to 100 samples at once. Rising is very great. Just sharing, I do think that, obviously this is an exception, and I responded with that. But I do think there's a signal there, right? That, it is penetrating further down into, the high school, or there's a pre-high school, like high school context, that, access to data, tools and environments are, make it easy. There would be actually a community of interest in that space. So just sharing, because, by the way, so I wanted to do some open access data, a week later, late last week, she sends me figures, and she actually got it right. I said, yeah, we already knew the answer. So she actually got the prediction right.
Yeah. I think one thing, there's a question in my head when it comes to this. Also, we talk about risk. And this is gonna sound fairly journalistic, and I'm really just a conversation we have. Do we need eighth graders to have access to real data? But where do we go from the space of training? And I don't want to infantilize this person who's doing good work and really could be empowered. But there is some question here about at what point is worth it. Like say, I want to drive. And to a 6-year-old, like, sure, hand them a controller or something for a video game and let them drive around. You're not going to hand them the keys to the car. And so, again, I don't know what the answer is, but I think we need to answer that question in these cases of there is a limit probably to who we want to hand the data just because I didn't make a mistake, they don't understand it. And maybe we can teach them, maybe we're sure to get there. So I'm excited to hear that. That's so cool. And I think it's a great use case for the open access data set. So I think that's a part of the conversation. That's hard to have since it's so new. Never had the chance to do this before.
My question is for, I guess, the whole room of whether synthetic data sets are promising for that sort of use case or not. Because I do think ideally the researcher is a little researcher, like she should be able to discover something new. So we don't want to be like open data is great for that. But would synthetic data sets maybe open up more doors? Or would that just be like, it's not quite real enough for them to really get that satisfaction?
That's a really great question, and not all synthetic data sets are equal, right? Because you can do some that you can do analysis and do preserve those pieces. It's not the same. Like, and you want to hit the real data sets to do it, but I think you do a lot of testing validation with some of those synthetically but statistically consistent data sets. There's a whole field out there doing this kind of work to say, hey, can we generate a synthetic data set for broader sharing that people can use and find patterns and preserve the original row level data that might be hard to share externally. And so it's cool. It's another option. It can provide something very realistic. You still need to go validate that original data, but it's a great question.
I personally would be so mad if I were a kid who was given a synthetic research thing and then found out that I had just been analyzing crap data. Because, I mean, you want to do something real. My 8th grade science project was like looking at, we had a forest fire or a huge wildfire in the area, and so I was looking at plant regrowth. But like, that I feel could be counterproductive for the people who are very, very young and stepping their first time into this. It would be a huge disappointment. I don't know, at least from my mindset, to find out that I've been working with junk data.
Hey, everybody, my name is Sophia, and so I'm going to speak for a niche part of the population here, but so I went to a public magnet school in Louisville, Kentucky, and my school had a science fair that my magnet had participated in every year, and each year we sent 5 to 10 students to the Intel International Science Fair, which is a huge platform where a couple hundred kids in high school who are doing really extraordinary work get to go and showcase this work. And there are some really amazing real world applicable projects that go with that. which include creating hearing aids that cost less than $10 to make, distributed. And there's been tons of robotics. I don't know about any genomic specific projects, but by not allowing students to access that data, we are taking that out of running entirely. I understand it's a very niche part of the population, but those kids with a lot of guidance and support, obviously throughout their lives, have already made such a huge splash, and then they're going to continue to do that. So making this an option for them, I think, is a really powerful thing to do, especially if we decide to expand to high schools, target some of the high schools that send kids historically to such a big platform like Intel ISA.
And just to step back and kind of frame how I think this works, again, glad to be correct if someone has a clear understanding of the point. Right now, NIH, for example, is not actually making a lot of decisions about just the AnVIL about really who has access to the data. It is first and foremost an institution that must kind of put someone forward and say, this is someone we are willing to allow to access or to ask for access to the data. It's then after that, the NIH would respond. And I think much of that, my understanding is that those data access committees that make those decisions are a lot of times trusting that institution's trust in that researcher. So I think the X to solve for here is, what is the institution that is sufficiently and confidently validating these high school researchers and willing to take on liability for them? I think then you can get to the question about, does an NIH data access committee think they should grant access or not?
Yeah, I think that, sorry, the risk that we're talking about here that we need to anchor back to, because I agree we want to facilitate these opportunities. The thing we have to remember, this is human data. A participant consented to this with some expectation of protection of their information, their own genomes. And so that's where the risk is. And we're so far away, so formalized, and I think it's right. How do we facilitate this? But again, it's about that trust of that person, because anybody could accidentally re-identify a patient in all of us. You go back and say, oh, I tried to find this down. Oh, how many people? And you could stumble on the news article of the person who had the car accident. That's why in all of us we remove publicly reportable events, because that risk is there, whether it's intentional or not. And I think that's the thing about trust, because we don't want to harm participants. And so it's not about denying access for other reasons. And so how do we, while protecting those participants and respecting their privacy and their consent, how do we then facilitate the widest audience possible? And I think this is an edge case where there's a lot of these aspects of learning and growing and risks that come in, and we got to figure out how to get there. But we can't forget either that it's like, hey, this is about other real people too, that, you know, we need to make sure we're respecting. And it's a hard place to be in. We're really stuck in this of, we want as much access as possible, but all the respect we have to the person. So it's really tough. It's just to make sure we're getting that framing. Yeah, we'll love to do it. Want to get there.
Well, and I think the other side of that, very important, the risk, the benefit too, and it's funny, even though this is a niche group, but if you think about it more broadly, what we were just talking about in terms of the citizen science piece and all of that, is these high school students, these college students, these people are all the future users and future researchers who are then going to both use and contribute to AnVIL and to this whole ecosystem, right? So that maybe that's the risk benefit place to be, is thinking about the consent of the participants and that risk the organization, plus not just the future of the most access possible to the data, but the future use of the data and who's using it, and creating those future users and users who will be respectful and understanding of not just this data to mine, but these are actual people who consented to have their data in the first place. Just food for thought.
I'm way more concerned about big companies like Palantir doing nefarious things with my data, because I have all of us participants as well as a researcher than I ever would of a high school student having access to my data. Just putting that up. But secondly, secondly, I do think that the fact that the biomedical data that we work with does make it harder for citizen science is not something to shy away from, because I feel like a lot of public support, public interest, public engagement is sorely lacking, specifically for biomedical health science And I mean, like, so, cause I work with, communities that are like, astrobiology and all this stuff, like astronomy data and all this stuff, like, right, ecology, like, people get really engaged because there is data and they play with it and they respect their citizen science or community scientists. And, they found ways to play together. And so I really don't want us to shy away from like, oh, this is hard. We gotta like, put this to one side, because I think if we did engage more, if we had people excited and they cared more, then maybe they'd be giving a shit more about us now. We're not in a great place.
Thanks for that. I'm looking at the clock. Maybe there's like one last quick comment.
So this is experience from all of us, because I find it very difficult to communicate what I learned from all of us when the training come in, because they have to be on the same platform. I cannot share the ID stuff. Sometimes I say, if I just mask the ID, I just change it to random numbers, create a synthetic data set that's masked, put error in there. And I just want them to show this is how you run a district questions. And then I have videotape and they can see it. They don't need to see the IDs. They just see a screen, but all of us, you cannot share your screen with outsiders. So we have to be on the same platform, in the same room, and I show them, oh, they have to get access on my workspace or on my work notebook, copy down, and they see it. So sometimes I feel like for educational purpose, all we need is, oh, this is how data looks like, and then that's the interface to connect with it. I don't really need to reanalyze data and waste my time just like, but for education purpose, I think that's good.
Well, thanks for those thoughtful comments from all of you. That's, gives a lot of points of reflection. There's this fundamental tension, and I think all of us here are researchers, and we see the good in the world. We know the power of data aggregation, but at the same time, there are real sensitivities. These are real people that are have agreed to do certain things, but maybe not other things. So I think that tension is very fundamental, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. But it's really important that we can have these discussions and really thoughtful discussions here. So there's a couple closing remarks. I'm looking at the clock, and I know people have planes to catch and other travels. So there's just a couple last closing statements I wanted to make here. So first of all, please, take the QR code. We'll also email out to all of you, but we really want to hear from you all. We really want to collect feedback. This is only the second time we've ever done this. I think some parts we got A++, and some parts I think could be further improved. But I think the trends are there, right? We're getting a lot of engagement from the community. We're hearing all the different dimensions from research to teaching, from basic science to clinical science. All this is great. I'm over the moon thrilled about how well the conference went. But we do want to hear from you. If there's other topics, if there's other tweaks to the structure of how we want to present, all these sorts of things. We were very, very, very interested in hearing from you, all of you. This community is, every year we'll get less and less about us, more and more about you, the community, to make sure that your needs are served. So please fill that out. Again, we'll follow up with email as well. Another comment is just basically thank you. Thanks for all your participation. Thanks for all your great discussions. The plans are still kind of early in development, but I think it's safe to assume we're going to have another one. I think it's been a huge success. So thank you very much for your time and attention. Safe travels home. See you all. Thanks to our hosts here. Any final comments?
Sure. No, once again, we really appreciate you all coming. Welcome to Vanderbilt. Hope you had a nice time. I know some folks may be staying an extra night and going downtown. Who knows? Have fun. But anyway, it was wonderful to have you. If you do have any other questions, we're happy to answer them. Like, this isn't as Michael said, this is the end of our engagement. It's not like, great, see you next time. But it's like, hey, reach out to us. We've got the community Slack. We have all these other opportunities. We have this feedback survey we'd love for you to fill out. We want to continue to engage. We want to make progress. We want to move things forward. We're excited to do opportunities. So don't be shy. It was a pleasure having you here in Nashville.